Okay, so here's your lesson on worksheet P18. This is for learning how to factor completely when you have a trinomial. What we're looking at here, I like to call this my ACB method. All right. The reason I like to call it ACB method is that we have an A value, which is the number in front of our squared term, our B value, which is the number in front of our variable to the first power, and our C value is our constant. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the A value and multiply the C value. So in this case, we have 1 times 40 is 40. The B value is 14. Our job, and this is the new stuff for the factoring part of it. Remember last assignment, the P17, we already had the 4 terms. We're trying to turn this 14n into 2 terms. We're going to try to split it up into 2 terms. And the way we do that is we have to find 2 numbers that add up to that 14, but multiply to the 40 that we get when we do A times C. Well, in order to get to 14 and 40, there's some different numbers that we could get. We always concentrate on the multiply part. In this case, we could do something like 4 times 10 makes 40, right? When we add them together, 4 plus 10, they make 14. We've got our 2 numbers. We're going to actually split 14n into 10n and 4n. All right? We're going to bring down our n squared. We're going to bring down our plus 40. And now it becomes a problem just like our P17 worksheet, where we're going to group these guys. And we're going to find out what they have in common. These guys have an n in common. We're going to divide both of these guys by n. And we end up with n plus 10. And like on the P17 worksheet, we know that this group is going to stay consistent. N plus 10, n plus 10. Which means I need to take out a 4 out of the 4n to get to the n. And so we're taking out a 4. And then we put our front terms together, and plus 4, followed up with the common binomial after each term. And there's our answer. We have now factored n squared plus 14n plus 40. The new stuff that we are doing is finding the AC value, multiply to get our 2 numbers. The B value has to add with our 2 numbers. So using that same employment on question number 2, our AC value, 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. Our B value is negative 4. We're going to multiply. Now, I don't worry about the positive negative stuff so much when I first start picking my 2 numbers. How do I multiply to get to 12, add or subtract to get to 4? Well, how about a 6 and a 2? And if I go 6 minus 2, negative 6 plus 2 to get to a negative 4, right? So which means the 6 is negative, the 2 is positive. We're splitting 4x into a negative 6x and a positive 2x. And then grouping, plus in between. I think I forgot to do that over there. There should have been a plus in between. And we're taking out an x minus 6, x minus 6. We got to take out a 2 to go from 2x down to x. Leaves us with x plus 2 and x minus 6. Again, if from this point down, if you need help with that process, go back to worksheet or to the video lesson on P17 in order to do that one. All right, number 3. We've got ACB. AC is 4, B value is negative 5. Well, we're going to multiply 4 and 1 together to get to 5, but to get to a negative 5, they're both going to be negative. And of course, 2 negatives do multiply to equal a positive, right? So we're splitting this up into 4m, negative 4m, and negative 1m. Group. Plus in between. These guys have an m in common. So this group is also going to be an m minus 4. To go from negative 1m down to positive 1m, we got to take out a negative 1. The m and the negative 1 go together. The m and the -4 go together. All right, the reason I like this method is that, yeah, it's pretty, we could do a little bit shorter cut with these guys in front of the squared variable being a 1. But what happens when it's not a 1? That's why this method is awesome, because we do exactly the same process no matter if this is a 5 or a 1. We're going to take our a times our c value. 5 times the 4 is 20. The b value, -9. Two numbers that multiply to 20 that add to -9. Multiply to 20, add to 9. How about something like 5 times 4? Does that work for you? Well, to get to a -9, it's going to have to be a -5 and a -4. So we're splitting this guy into -5n and a -4n. Still got my +4, still got my 5n squared. By the way, if I flip these guys around, go -4n minus 5n, it would work out exactly the same answer. It's just my two answer terms would be flipped around from each other. So no big deal which way you go. We're going to take out the 5 and an n, got a 5 in common and an n. Leaves us with, when we divide by 5n, just leaves us with a single n. When I divide this one by 5n, I get a -1. So n minus 1 is my group. To go from -4n to a 1n is going to take out a -4. So 5n minus 4 is one of my terms, n minus 1 is the other. All right. So I did put problems like question number 5 in there on purpose. When I go 8 times 27, all right, I know 8 times 20 is 160. 8 times 7 is 56. 160 plus 56 is 216. So my AC value is 216. You can always use a calculator to double check that. B is equal to 30. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 216 and add to 30. All right, this isn't exactly an easy process. This is where I have another system in order to find the two numbers that are going to work. All right, one of the things I do know is that 8 times 27 is equal to my 216. However, I also happen to know that those do not add up to 30. So what I do is I go and I look on my last guess. That's essentially what it is. I'm trying to find two numbers that multiply this and add this. That was my guess. Didn't work. So I look at this one and I find a number that goes into 27. Okay? Well, for example, 9. So I'm going to try 9. Well, 9 times what is equal to 216? If I don't know, then what I do is I go to my calculator and I type in 216 divided by 9. And so it's going to be 9 times 24. Do those two make a 30? The answer is no, they don't. And so I look at my bigger number, in this case happens to be 24, and I find a number that goes into 24 that I haven't used yet. I'm going to try the number 12. 12 times what is equal to 216? Well, off the top of my head, I don't know, so I go 216 divided by 12, and I get 18. Those two do add up to 30. And so I have found my two numbers. I've got 12x and 18x. And that's the hardest part of this process, because once I get those two numbers, I just go through my process of grouping, finding out what they have in common. 8 and 12, there's a 4 that goes into both, an x and an x. An x and an x goes into both. When I divide both of these guys by 4x, I end up getting 2x plus 3, which means this guy is going to make a 2x plus 3. Well, what do I have to do to an 18 to get down to 2? I got to take out a 9. Right? Divide by 9, divide by 9. I do end up getting the 3, by the way, in case you were curious. 4x plus 9 and 2x plus 3. It's an awesome system. Give it a shot. You got 5 more to try. Go ahead and give that an opportunity and then send it to me. and I'll give you some feedback, and if you're doing really, really well, I'll send you the assessment. Thanks. Bye.